Greetings and welcome to GlobalSBM Business Talk. Today, we are honored to welcome Mr. Taranpreet Singh as our guest speaker. Mr. Taranpreet is an entrepreneur and ex-venture capital previously associated with Microsoft Accelerator, Mobisy, and Mamaearth. Previously, he was guest lecturer and speaker at Peking University, Kazan OIC Forum, United Nations, Asian Development Bank, IIT Delhi, Delhi University, and TEDx. He has been featured in 30 Under 30 by IIT and IIM Indore for social entrepreneurship. So without any delay, let's hear from the man himself. Mr. Taranpreet, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Hi, Parshu. Thank you so much for the generous introduction, and thank you so much for having me here to share my experiences. And I think I really believe my experiences could be of value for the audience, right? So just to give a brief about myself, much of my life I've been an entrepreneur, have wore different hats as a ex VC and even a management consultant, consulting CEOs of large companies and even small ventures. And had a chance to work across the world, across APAC region, Middle East, and even in European and US regions. And, had a chance to work with Microsoft, with Mamaearth, and then, speak at different forums, including UN, ADB, and being a guest lecturer at IITs, IIMs, Peking University, and a lot of different institutions. My vision, is more towards entrepreneurship, how entrepreneurship can help save the world, right? And why we as entrepreneurs would really change the world for good, right? So before I start moving on to the specifics of the topic, this is what I wanted to share, because I really believe that we as entrepreneurs, when we create wealth, we don't just uplift ourselves, we uplift our families, we also uplift the families of our employees who are employed by us, right? And they go on to uplift the communities. When the community is prosperous, and it goes on to make the nation prosperous, right? And then it goes on to make the humanity prosperous, right? So I really think there is a chain reaction that we as entrepreneurs contribute in the society. And I think for whosoever wants to jump into entrepreneurship and is capable, and and is has that intuition of jumping into entrepreneurship, he or she should definitely jump into, because at the end of the day, we are creating that impact which the world really needs, right? So let me just share my screen, and stick to the topic of the today, that how to make a profitable six figures side hustles within weeks, right? And will share my experiences, and also would share, the specifics of going from an idea to how to create something tangible out of that, right? So I'll just share my screen. Let me know if you could see my screen.
Yes.
Great. So, like I mentioned about my introduction, which is already covered, had a chance to work with Microsoft and different organizations. I'll jump onto this, this very picture, which is very close to my heart, right? So I had a chance to live a lot of different life of being in the corporate as a student, and then as an entrepreneur, right? And then also as an entrepreneur which raised venture capital, right? And I'll say, if you move towards left to right, if you see the leftmost photograph, it's like the life when you are in a job. You go at 9 a.m. and then you come back at 7 p.m., right? You pretty much know what you have to do throughout the day and during the weeks and the months, right? Very straightforward life. And then the second picture is the picture of an entrepreneur. We as entrepreneurs, face each day. It's like roads with blind turns, right? And the third picture is kind of roads with blind turns and a slope. That's I say the most practical view of what an entrepreneur lives look like. But then, when you move from the leftmost road to the rightmost road, right? Uh, the journey may be difficult, but then if you go at the top, the journey, if you look at the road, it's absolutely worth it. It's very beautiful, right? And hence, uh, there may be struggles, but then the outcome achieved by entrepreneurship is really really great, right? Now I'll say that why people pursue entrepreneurship, or you might be thinking that why you should jump for entrepreneurship, right? Uh, my personal experience, I jumped into entrepreneurship because I always had that intuition that I am competent and to create something which should change the world, right? And I should also have that freedom in the wealth creation, right? And I'll say that they're like these couple of reasons. The freedom, sometimes you hate your jobs, your bosses, what they're doing, right? And you might just want to jump into something where you are the boss. The second is the wealth creation. Sometimes you hit your ceiling with your income, and once you hit that ceiling with the income, you start move towards creating that wealth, right? And wealth is different from being rich, right? You could gain wealth from equity, you could gain wealth from different assets, right? And you actually build assets, right? And the third could be, you could be so passionate about something, like changing something. This could be a not for profit, this could be a for profit organization, but when you're passionate about something, you have that vision, that and the skill set that you will go on and achieve that goal, you go on and jump into entrepreneurship, right? And sometimes you don't have any other option, where all these SMEs, small micro entrepreneurs, fall into place. And you might have seen a lot of people who burn their bridges and no other choice, and hence have to jump into entrepreneurship, right? But I think with whatever reason you jump into entrepreneurship, I'll say that the the outcome of this whole process is very beautiful. I'll move on to the next step. You know, so what is your passion, right? So sometimes people ask me, I'll say a lot of times indeed, people ask me that, we're not able to identify our passion. I'll say my personal experience has been that I tried a lot of different things and I experimented a lot of different things, and hence was able to identify what I am good at and what I'm happy doing it, right? So that's an intersection of, something which creates wealth, something you're doing it and you're happy and you're really good at, right? And I'll say the skills, if you look at the skills, look inside you that you have been extremely good at and what you love doing, right? uh, and nobody outside can go on and tell you what makes you happy, and that is very subjective, very customized for each one of you who is listening this, right? And the second is the hidden trial. you know uh, if you have to identify for yourself, because there's just one Taran, there's just one you, right? And you are the only unique person in the world, or out of the 7 billion people, right? And it has to be completely customized according to you. There is no one fit, right? uh, and you have to do those hit and trial, right? And to figure out what is good for you, what you love doing it. And consider this is like our brains are like an algorithm, and you improve on it with data points, right? And sometimes you're lucky and you'll find your destination in the one try, and sometimes it may take some experiences for you to achieve what you want to achieve, right? But then it's all about experimentation, right? Third is increase your top of funnel. I'll just give you a rule which worked for me and most of my friends who are multimillionaires and even billionaires. uh, I'll say, and that's 1% conversion rule. What do you mean by that? This 1% conversion rule, out of all the 100 opportunities that you have, or if you try 100 times, you'll succeed one time. If you set that expectations, you may succeed in the first go, but then you may also succeed in the 100th go, right? But then if you increase your top of the funnel and if you explore as much as you can, right, you'll be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve. And the last is the consistency over hard work. Now, if you want to start, let's say, a YouTube channel or an Instagram channel, or you want to start, let's say, a software business, a SaaS, or a marketplace, you have to, push things consistently. And when you push things consistently, it really makes that impact, right? Now, again, this is a very valid question, that what is success for you, right? And it's very different again for everyone who's listening this, right? And for everyone across the world, right? Is it $1 billion valuation which you can achieve, let's say, with a highly scalable business model? Sometimes, or I'll say mostly, it's VC funded and takes 5 to 10 years. Is it $50 million in cash, which could be again with a highly scalable business model, usually takes 10 to 20 years with no VC funding? And again, this is like a generic thing, and there are always exceptions, right? Or is it like a $10 million in cash business models with small market sizes, may or may not be with VC funding? Or is it $5 million in cash, with that you may achieve with jobs or SMEs, etc.? So success may be different for different people living at different locations and based on different experiences, right? Someone who's living in Nepal or India or any other Asia Pacific region with cost of living is very low, you may have success, maybe earning $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month, or even $10,000 a month. Someone who's living in Los Angeles may have that success living, let's say, with $100,000 a month or whatever that amount is, right? So financially, you have to set that expectation and set that goal, that what is success for you, and have a plan accordingly. If it's $1 billion valuation or $1 billion in cash, you have to think exponentially and think differently. And again, everything comes at a trade-off, which we might discuss in another conversation. So what are the different business models? I'll say there are two business models, the B2B and the B2C. You may go on and create a product and directly sell to the consumers, or you may sell to the businesses. And why I'm telling this is because this is the foundation of how you create that side hustle, right? Or how you create that business, right? And these are the fundamentals which I've learned over the time, and I really believe that you should know about this, so that you create that profitable six-figure side hustle. Now, when you thought of an idea, when you created a product, sometimes we are in the I'll say that assumption within assumption that when you create the best product, right, you'll go on and everybody will come and buy your product. Life is not a bed of roses, and hence this that creating a good product, I'll say, is just 10-20% of effort. You need to have that constant iteration of the product and place your product in some kind of a supply chain. That could be an online distribution channels or offline distribution channels. You may create a drink, you may create let's say some kind of a beverage or a food product, right? And then you may go through that offline supply chain, which is like manufacturer to super stocklist to distributor to sub distributor to retailer and consumer. There your consumer might be the super stock list, but then obviously all those stakeholders in the supply chain are also you have to take care of. What has really happened over the last 10-15 years is the online channels have created very easy distribution channels. It's very hard to penetrate into offline supply chains, but now you can go on and sell on Amazon and Flipkart, list your products and directly sell over there, right? But it could be direct sales where where you sell directly to the end consumer, that's D2C, or you could export of services or products abroad, right? So there could be distribution channels, n number of distribution channels, which you have to consider according to the product that you have. If you have a digital product, you can sell it through your website, through different affiliates, through YouTube channels, and so on and so forth. If you have a physical product, the distribution channels like offline, online, and direct sales or export of products, it's completely different ways of how you go on and sell these. Now, sometimes people come and say, hey, how do I become a unicorn? And by unicorn means that you create a $1 billion valuation. Now, even if you're creating a, $100,000 business, or a $1 billion business, right? Like certain things that you need to take care of, right? If you are able to increase the revenues exponentially with linear expenses, right? You are able to create unfair value or exponential value. Such kind of businesses are able to generate a lot of wealth in the longer run, and hence these are the businesses which attain that unicorn status. These could be, you create a software product, a SaaS product, and then you scale it, right? You may just need those 100, 500 people, right, of creating that product, but then the network effect, or let's say the marketing, can really bring you the exponential revenues. I'll just give an example. WhatsApp was created by just 15, 16 odd guys, right? It was sold for like $16 billion, right? So that's the power of linear expenses and exponential revenues. And if you keep this thing in mind, whatever you are trying to do, even if it's a side hustle or a business, or if it's you full-time jumping into the business, I think this is something which will really, really help you. So the next is how to find that right business idea. Again, I'll go back to this. There are a lot of factors, when you want to find a right business idea. I'll just share my personal experience. I was really good at, management consulting. I was really good at, solving problems for the clients. And hence, I created Shark Ventures, which is into coaching CXOs, through their growth journeys from idea to seed stage to Series A stage, right? And I've lived that journey from 0 to 1, and I really love that whole process of going from 0 to 1, and that I am a part of the journey of an entrepreneur, right? So that is how I chose, because I had some credibility. I loved the process, and I was really good at, and I was able to have that, I'll say, uh, tangible outcomes for the clients, right? But then you have to look, within yourself, that what are you passionate about, what are you good at, what you're really good at, you know what is the credibility that you have, what you've been doing so for like quite so long, right? And at the end of the day, can you scale it to like $100,000 or $500,000, $1 million? And because of my credibility and the outcomes that I was able to achieve for my clients, I was able to hit 6 figures, in a couple of months, right? And I think it's just that matter of understanding that if you really love doing that, and if you can create that unfair advantage for your clients and value. Now, a lot of you may think that what affects valuations, right? Now you heard about the $1 billion valuation and how valuations are different from revenues, right? So someone like a manufacturer may value his company based on his assets and liabilities and revenues, right? But then, in tech world, the valuations has come up as a new world, right? A new word where, it's like a multiple of your revenue, like 5 or 10x, which investors usually give you, right? Someone with a higher valuation may not mean that, it has like a lot of cash flows, but then which means that it has the forecast, or maybe 2 or 3 years down the lane, this could achieve a lot of value, not just for the customers, but also for the shareholders, right? So someone with the potential to scale rapidly with incremental expenses and exponential revenues would have a higher valuation. And example could be a software product, something you created once and sold it multiple times, and then product having a leverage with brand, intellectual property, distribution channels, network effect, or a business model. You could take an example of WhatsApp for network effect. There are a lot of examples of intellectual property where, you create some kind of software, you file patents or trademarks, and then, you go on to, or copyrights, sell it multiple times. And then there is a very large market size and the right time to disrupt the market. There's a very old saying that, if if the waves are high and you're sailing in the sea, you reach the shore very easily, right? And if you go along with the flow of the wind, along the flow of the waves, right, along the flow of the market, right, it's very easy to create business in such a category. For example, in India, it's electric vehicles here. It's disrupting and it's just growing really fast, and the government is pushing it and so on and so forth. You have to identify which category is growing really fast in your particular geography or which you want to disrupt. The last is a very strong team with proven execution skills. Again, that affects valuation and also your business. If you have a strong team, by strong team, I mean complementary skill set, your network experiences, and the ability to go through those adversities and persevere and have that courage to jump off full time, I think you've hit the right person. Execute, because that is the most important thing, right? And again, the question is how to identify the right market. I'll say, uh, like I mentioned, it completely depends upon which geography you are targeting. Let's say so there are waves in different geographies, right? For example, in the US, um, you could talk about the Web3 or blockchain or uh, artificial intelligence at this point, and um, it's very glamorous to solve such kind of problems with these exponential technologies, right? So when you if you want to raise that venture capital, it's easy to ride that wave. In India and towards the east, uh, the the wave is completely different. For example, in India, I mentioned about electric vehicles and then blockchain and then also the artificial intelligence. Obviously, there's some coherence, right? The market size should be large enough and should be growing, right? That is the first pillar, because you cannot change the market size. You can tweak your product, your problem statement, your solution, but then you cannot change the market size. It should be large, it should be growing, it should have that space for you to exist, and you should be able to come up with a differentiator. And that is true for even if you want to create a YouTube channel or if you want to create a physical product. Now, one of the things is, when you go on to raise venture capital or even for yourself, you create a pitch deck. A pitch deck is usually of like 10, 15 different slides. And these are the key pillars of pitch deck. Now, I'll share my personal experience that I use pitch deck obviously for venture capital and also, for myself. So the key pillars of the pitch deck are, you identify the problem statement, you quantify the problem statement rather than saying that, hey, these many people, there is a gap. You identify what sort of gap and quantify that gap in the market. You then come up with a solution and quantify the solution that if the problem is, let's say, at 90%, your solution would be able to, you know, solve it at 20 or 30%. Then there is a whole market which is valued at $2 or $3 billion or $100 billion, which is growing at 10 to 20% CAGR. And then you come up with a product. Hey, I have a product. And again, that's true for all the different channels, uh, that your product has certain defensibility, scalability. Your product has a differentiator, has a competitive, I'll say this could be intellectual property, or this may have some kind of network effects in the future, right? And this is and nobody would be able to copy it. And if somebody would be able to copy it, it will take another 12 months or 18 months for them to copy it, right? And then you come up with a traction slide where you mention what kind of traction that you have achieved, and then the testimonials, what sort of competitive advantage that you have, and the whole competitive analysis. What sort of team you have? Do you have that team that will take you to success, right? If, let's say, creating a YouTube channel, you need a photographer, you need someone to edit it. If you, let's say, want to create electric vehicle, you need hardware engineer, software engineer, IoT engineer, and then somebody to market it, right? Have you figured out the financials? Did you make the profit and loss statement? Did you create that financial forecast? This is how it will go. Have you identified your gross margins? Is what's happening in the market? What sort of funding is required? And what sort of instrument that you're looking to raise? Is it debt? Is it equity? Is it convertible or safe notes? I can go into depth about that in the later stage. And how would you be deploying that capital? So all these things are the key pillars of the pitch deck. And going on to the next slide, I'll say sharing my experiences. When you start up, right? Some of you might be starting up as individuals. Some of you might be starting up with co-founders. Now, if you're starting up with a co-founder, I'll say legal documents like co-founder agreements, the company incorporation and compliances are must. Please don't ignore it. Even if you uh, trust the person, I'll say getting an agreement in place, having all those terms and conditions written down, the termination clause, the exit clause, and the equity split clause, the vesting and the cliff period, all those things should be properly mentioned in the co-founder agreement, should be signed according to the jurisdiction of that particular area. I'll say second, having a mentor coach on board. I'll say even Team India or US has a coach for each of its departments, right? Even Ronaldo has a coach, right? And hence you need a coach because if you go on to experiment and do hit and trials with 100 different possible situations, you'll end up, sparing your whole life doing that, right? You need later, after a couple of years into business, I realized that I need a mentor for each of my departments. I need a mentor for strategy, for brand building, for technology, for operations. They can guide me because they are into depth. They are in depth about in that particular department. When you're starting up, buffer in savings. Have usually a buffer of at least 1 year of monthly expenses saved in FDs or other financial instruments. If you are in job, if you're a student, it really, really helps because if you, I say, if you define risk in entrepreneurship, there could be other risk. The major risk is the financial risk. And if you have that buffer, you're very confident inside. And I'll say, don't be infatuated by solving hard and complex problems. Solve easy problems first and build cash flow assets. Sometimes, we may go on and want to solve, put a satellite into a space. But then if your goal and vision is just to create wealth, you can do so by creating even an Instagram channel or, creating a software as a service, which is an easy problem to solve, right? Because it's easy to scale and has less barriers to entry and no regulations. So you have to think from that perspective. Now, again, how do you build up a buffer with $0? Sometimes, when you're building up, when you're starting up, you really, really need a buffer. So one of the things you want to buffer is the freelance skills. You can sell your skills. The second could be the service business. You can come up with a service business or an agency model. The third could be you could resell, trade, or digital or physical products. The fourth could be jobs and other kind of engagements. My perspective would be, I built a service business, and put that cash into my product business and scale my product business. You can also do job and save and then put it into the business that you want to really start. But then you should build up a buffer. And how do you hit the first 150K or $100,000? Go for businesses with high gross margins, someone with 80-90% of gross margins, so that you can have that profit and put back into the business, like high ticket consulting or software as a service. Second could be build intellectual property and license your technology to business. If you're good at in tech, you can do that. Third could be you could drop ship on Amazon and Flipkart. And fourth could be increase number of clients for your low ticket businesses. The LTV and CAC ratio should be high, right? So I chose the first one, went on to do this, the consulting, and a lot of my friends chose, the software as a service, or, if you have low ticket business selling for like $10, $20, you need clients in a volume. The only way you can do it is if the cost of acquisition of a client is $10, you need at least $100, $200 from that client. Only then it will make that business sense because you will all have all those costs, the fixed and variable costs. And hence, solving that easy problem first with high gross margins, with whatever skills and experiences that you have, I think is the best case scenario. And a rule of thumb to make $100 million, or even I'll say $100,000, there could be different ways. One could be you could sell a 10 cents product with 1 billion calls, and then you can hit $100 million. Or you could sell $100,000 product to just 1,000 clients and make $100 million, right? Don't fall into the dead zone, which is between these, right? But then it could be, if it's a low ticket product, it has to be an API call. It has to be extremely scalable without human intervention so that it can be scaled easily. If it's $100,000 product, it has to be like a direct sale. You need a human intervention if you want to sell such a high ticket product. And just towards the closure of this whole thing, now once you scale your side hustle, or once you scale your business and you want to go and expand your business, I'll just touch base on the science of raising funds. I'll say there are 3 or 4 different ways. Initially, they're like 3 F's, which is the friend, family, and fools. You could raise from your inner circle. The next could be the angel investors. These could be the VP of your company or the CEO of your existing company. Then there are incubators, accelerators, and then the institutional VCs, depending upon the stage that you are at. And the last slide, which is the basic legalities and finance for startups, I suggest don't buy liabilities when you hit, let's say when you into a salary, or save yourself, save your money for creating assets, and and then build up your cash flow assets. Digital assets like YouTube, Instagram, apps, etc. You know, are some of the assets which are creating a lot of cash flows for a lot of entrepreneurs these days, right? Aim for the first $1,000, then $10,000, and then $150,000. And even though the ways may not be scalable, and sometimes when you hit that numbers, you may tweak or build a new category which is scalable. The second last thing is have legal agreements in place, even though your co-founder is your best friend. And I'll say the last is to have mentors and coaches on board and be vulnerable to them. This is how you learn. I'll say thank you. I'm very much open to questions. I just wanted to make it short and focus more on the questions, that I could take more questions and help you clear your doubts.